Nellie Carter smiled as she looked down at the boarding pass she'd been carrying in the front pocket of her passport for weeks. 8 years. 8 Christmases spent in temporary housing, field offices, and hotel rooms across different countries. In 3 days, she would finally be home. Then her phone buzzed. She expected another message asking what gifts to bring. Instead, she saw her mother's name. She opened the text. "Don't come. Ryan doesn't want you here for Christmas." For several long seconds, the airport around her seemed to disappear. She read it again. Then a third time. No explanation, no apology, just one sentence that erased 8 years of waiting. Nellie slowly typed 2 words. Understood. She pressed send, locked her phone, and quietly stood up to leave the departure lounge. She wasn't going to beg for permission to come home. What she didn't know was that by walking away so calmly, she had just destroyed a plan her family thought was already guaranteed. The cancellation desk was almost empty. "Can I help you?" the airline representative asked with a polite smile. "I need to cancel the final leg of my trip," Nellie replied. "You don't want to fly home anymore?" She hesitated for only a second. "My family changed their plans." The representative nodded sympathetically, without asking another question. Within half an hour, Nellie had exchanged the remainder of her itinerary for a quiet holiday package on a nearby island. It wasn't the Christmas she'd imagined, but it was better than arriving somewhere she clearly wasn't wanted. As the confirmation email arrived, she glanced at the suitcase beside her feet. Every inch of it had been packed with gifts. Scarves her mother had once admired during a video call. Imported coffee Ryan had jokingly asked her to bring years earlier. Educational toys for nieces and nephews she'd only ever met through phone screens. She stared at the luggage for a long moment before quietly zipping it closed again. For 8 years, she had worked as a senior operations manager for an international humanitarian logistics organization. Emergencies had dictated her life. Floods, earthquakes, supply shortages. Every holiday request had been denied because someone else needed help more urgently. Each time her family said the same thing. "We understand, next Christmas." Eventually, next Christmas became 8 years. This year had finally been different. She had requested leave almost a year in advance. Her supervisor approved it immediately because everyone knew how long she'd been waiting. Even after her father passed away months earlier, she had promised herself she would make it home this time. She wanted to sit with her mother, visit his grave, and finally have the conversations that had been postponed for years. Instead, one text message had ended all of it. Oddly, she didn't cry. She simply accepted what the message had made painfully clear. If someone had to convince your own mother to tell you not to come home, then home probably wasn't waiting for you anymore. So she spent Christmas exactly where no one expected her to be. She walked quiet beaches, read books she'd never had time to finish, ignored the growing number of notifications lighting up her phone. For the first time in years, nobody was asking her to solve a crisis. Until the morning after Christmas. She reached for her phone with sleepy eyes and immediately froze. 12 missed calls. 3 voicemails. Messages from her mother. Messages from Ryan. Then one unfamiliar number. A law office. Before she could even decide whether to call back, another voicemail notification appeared. She pressed play. A calm man's voice filled the room. "Ms. Carter, this is David Holloway, your family's attorney. It's extremely important that you contact me immediately, before anyone signs anything." Her phone began ringing again. It was the same number. Nellie stared at the screen until the call stopped ringing. The room fell quiet again, except for the sound of waves outside the balcony. She could call the attorney first. Or she could call the family that had told her not to come home. For a long moment, she did neither. Instead, she scrolled back through old messages. There were years of them. Mom's water heater broke. Ryan's truck needs repairs. We're a little short on the mortgage this month. Every time, she'd wired money without asking questions. She remembered approving transfers while sitting in airport terminals, inside supply warehouses, and once from a relief camp after working nearly 20 hours straight. She had missed birthdays because flights were canceled during emergencies. She had watched nieces blow out birthday candles through video calls. Even when their father became seriously ill, she had been coordinating emergency medical shipments halfway across the world. By the time she finally secured leave, the funeral had already taken place. Only one message from that period still stayed pinned near the top of her inbox. It was from her father. "Don't blame yourself. You kept your promise to help people. I'm proud of you." She read it again, then quietly locked the phone. Ryan had never spoken that way. Whenever Nelly sent money home, he always joked that overseas jobs must be making her rich. When she explained that most of her work involved long hours in difficult conditions, he'd simply laugh. "You always make everything sound dramatic." Months before, during one of their rare family video calls, Ryan had casually asked, "So, are you planning to stay overseas forever?" She'd smiled. "No, my contract ends this year." His smile had disappeared almost immediately. "Oh." At the time, she thought nothing of it. Looking back now, that single reaction felt strangely different. There had been other moments too. Whenever she mentioned booking her Christmas flight, her mother quickly changed the subject. When Nelly suggested staying an extra week after the holidays, her mother suddenly remembered another appointment. She had assumed everyone was still grieving their father. Now she wasn't so sure. Her phone vibrated again. The attorney. She looked at it, then tapped another contact instead. "Mom." The call connected after only 2 rings. "Nelly." Her mother's voice sounded exhausted. "You got my message." "I did." Silence filled the line. Finally, Nelly asked, "Why?" Her mother hesitated long enough that Nelly wondered if the call had disconnected. Then she answered quietly, "It's only one Christmas." Nelly closed her eyes. "Only one. Ryan just wanted some peace this year. Peace from me. Please don't make this harder." Nelly frowned. Her mother wasn't angry. She sounded nervous, as though someone else might be listening. "I spent 8 years trying to get home," Nelly said calmly. "I know. I already bought the tickets." "I know. I packed presents." Another pause. "I know." None of those answers explained anything. Her mother wasn't defending Ryan. She wasn't even defending herself. She sounded like someone trying to end the conversation before saying something she shouldn't. "Nelly." "Yes. I'm sorry." The words came out so softly, they almost disappeared beneath the static. Then the line went dead. Nelly lowered the phone slowly. That apology didn't match the message she'd received 3 days earlier. Something was wrong. Before she could think any further, another incoming call appeared. David Holloway. This time she answered immediately. "Ms. Carter." "Yes." "My name is David Holloway. I represent your late father's estate." "I know who you are. I've been trying to reach you since yesterday." Her heartbeat quickened. "Why?" The attorney didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked one question. His voice had become noticeably more serious. "Ms. Carter, did anyone tell you your father's property was being sold this morning?" Nelly sat upright so quickly that the chairs scraped across the tile floor. "What did you just say?" "I said your father's property is scheduled to be sold today," David Holloway repeated. "And based on what I've discovered this morning, I believe the transaction should not move forward." For a moment, Nelly couldn't respond. "My father never told me the house was being sold." "That," the attorney replied carefully, "is exactly why I called." He asked if she had access to a secure internet connection. I do. I'm sending you a video meeting invitation. There are documents I need you to see. Less than 5 minutes later, Nelly was staring at David Holloway on her laptop screen. His office shelves were lined with legal volumes, but the stack of files spread across his desk drew her attention immediately. I apologize for contacting you during your holiday, he said. Unfortunately, this became urgent. What happened? The buyers are expected at your family home within the hour. Nelly blinked. Buyers? Yes. My mother never mentioned any of this. Mr. Holloway folded his hands. According to the paperwork submitted to me, your brother has been presenting himself as the person authorized to complete the sale. Nelly frowned. Ryan wouldn't have that authority. That is one of the issues. He lifted a folder and removed several documents. I initially assumed there had been a misunderstanding. Then I reviewed your father's estate file. He held up one page toward the camera. Can you read the highlighted name? Nelly leaned closer. Her own name. Nelly Carter. Her stomach tightened. I don't understand. This page identifies you in a fiduciary capacity connected to the property. Me? Yes. But I haven't signed anything. Exactly. He lowered the page before she could read the rest. I don't want to discuss the complete document until I verify several remaining records. At this stage, I only need you to understand one thing. The sale should pause. Nelly took a slow breath. If there's even a chance something isn't legal. There is. Then stop it. You understand that doing so may upset your family. They already told me not to come home. The attorney nodded quietly. I'll prepare the emergency filing. The meeting ended only briefly before another call came in. This time, it wasn't from the attorney. It was one of Nelly's cousins. She answered. Nelly, where are you? I'm overseas. What? Ryan told everyone you didn't care enough to come after Uncle passed away. Nelly's expression hardened. He said what? He told the family you chose work over us again. In the background, she could hear voices, chairs moving, children laughing, and someone greeting strangers at the front door. The buyers had already arrived. Her cousin lowered his voice. They're walking through the house right now. Before Nelly could answer, another voice interrupted from the other end. Ryan, they need you to sign the final paperwork. The call disconnected. Minutes later, David Holloway called back. It's done. What is? I've filed an emergency legal notice with the closing company. What happens now? The transaction is frozen. Across town, in the middle of a house full of relatives, buyers, and real estate representatives. Everything had just come to a complete stop. Nelly had barely set her phone down when it rang again. This time, the screen displayed a name she hadn't seen in months. Ryan. She let it ring once. Twice. On the third ring, she answered. What? There was no greeting. No hello, no how are you. Ryan's voice was tight with frustration. What are you doing? I think that's my question. You had the sale stopped. I asked the attorney to pause it until he could verify the documents. You had no right. Nelly almost laughed. No right. You're not even here. I wasn't allowed to come, remember? A long silence followed. Then Ryan lowered his voice. Just call him back and tell him to remove the objection. Why? For the family's sake. Nelly looked out toward the ocean. For the family's sake. Mom needs this. If Mom needed it, why didn't she tell me? Ryan ignored the question. The buyers are threatening to walk away. If everything is legal, another buyer will come. You don't understand. No, Nelly replied evenly. I don't. His patience snapped. You've been gone for 8 years. You don't know what this family has been through. I know every month someone asked me for money. Ryan said nothing. I know I paid the mortgage more than once. Silence. I know I paid property taxes when Mom couldn't. Still nothing. And I know I was told not to come home. His breathing became audible through the phone. Finally, he spoke again. Just leave it alone. I can't. Why? Because I still don't know the truth. Ryan ended the call without another word. Less than 20 minutes later, David Holloway called again. I've finished reviewing the remaining estate file. Did you find something? I did. His expression was more serious than before. The pieces are beginning to fit together. Nelly listened without interrupting. The first thing I noticed was the timing. The timing. Your Christmas flight. She frowned. What about it? The purchase agreement was scheduled to close while you were traveling. Nelly slowly sat back in her chair. So they expected me to be in the air. Or occupied after arriving. He opened another file. Second, your mother's correspondence with the real estate office suddenly accelerated after you confirmed your travel dates. Nelly remembered those phone calls. Every time she'd happily counted down the days until Christmas, her mother had sounded distracted. At the time, she had blamed grief. Now the conversations took on an entirely different meaning. The third issue, David continued, is that your brother repeatedly represented himself as having authority over the property. But he didn't. No. What happens now? The title company has suspended the closing. The buyers, they're demanding answers. The bank, they've requested additional ownership verification. The notary, he refused to complete the transaction after receiving the emergency notice. Everything had unraveled in less than an hour. The carefully planned sale had become impossible to finish. Nelly lowered her voice. So, if I'd gone home? David nodded before she even finished. You likely would have arrived after the transaction had already been completed. The realization settled heavily between them. The text message, the sudden rejection, the insistence that she stay away. It had never been about avoiding an uncomfortable Christmas dinner. It had been about keeping her far enough away that no one would ask questions before the paperwork was finished. For the first time since this began, Nelly understood why her mother's apology had sounded so frightened. She hadn't been afraid of Christmas. She'd been afraid of what would happen if Nelly came home too soon. David reached for one final folder, lying apart from the others. Unlike the legal documents, this one was thinner. Older. He looked directly into the camera. Ms. Carter. Yes. While reviewing your father's estate records, I found something that was never intended for the closing file. Nelly felt her pulse quicken. What is it? He gently placed a folded handwritten letter on top of the desk. It was signed by your father. She stared silently at the familiar handwriting visible across the envelope. David spoke softly. I think you should read this before you speak to your mother or your brother. David carefully unfolded the letter, but kept his eyes on Nelly. I've read it, he said quietly. I thought it would be better if you heard it exactly as your father wrote it. Nelly nodded. Please. He began reading. If you're hearing this, then I wasn't here long enough to explain everything myself. Her throat tightened. The handwriting was unmistakably her father's. Nelly, you spent years believing your sacrifices went unnoticed. They didn't. She closed her eyes. She could almost hear his voice. Every mortgage payment you quietly covered, every property tax bill you paid without being asked twice, every holiday you missed because you chose responsibility over comfort. I saw all of it. Tears rolled down her face before she realized she was crying. For years, she had wondered whether anyone in her family truly understood what those overseas assignments had cost her. Her father had. David continued. A house isn't protected by the person who lives in it. It's protected by the person willing to carry it when no one else will. He turned to the final page. That is why I created the trust. Nelly inhaled sharply. The attorney lowered the letter. Your father transferred the home into a trust several months before his passing. And you are the trustee. She sat silently. He believed you were the only person who would make decisions based on what was right instead of what was easiest. Nelly looked out toward the ocean beyond the balcony. For the first time since receiving her mother's text, she didn't feel rejected. She felt seen. David explained the remaining documents one by one. The trust had been properly executed. Ownership had been legally transferred before her father's death. Ryan had never possessed authority to sell the property. Every signature he had provided claiming otherwise was invalid. The sale cannot proceed, David said. It never could. Later that afternoon, Nelly answered another call. This time it was her mother. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Finally, her mother whispered, He left you the house. He left me the responsibility, Nelly answered gently. A quiet sob came through the phone. I tried to stop this. Nelly listened. Ryan said if you came home, you'd ask questions. He kept saying everything would be easier if the sale was finished first. So you sent the text. I did. Why? I convinced myself it was only one Christmas. Her mother's voice broke. But after I sent it, I knew I'd done something I could never take back. Nelly didn't interrupt. I kept hoping you'd ignore me and come anyway. You know I never would. I know. Another silence settled between them. I failed both of you, her mother whispered. Nelly looked at the framed photo she had packed for the trip, a picture of her parents taken years before illness had changed everything. I'm not angry because of the house, she said quietly. I'm hurt because you believed I deserved to lose my family before I even knew what was happening. Her mother cried openly. There was no defense left to offer. Ryan called several times that evening. Nelly didn't answer. The following morning, David updated her again. The buyers had withdrawn from the transaction after learning the legal authority had been misrepresented. Their deposits were returned through the proper legal process. The title company formally voided the attempted sale. Ryan was instructed to retain separate legal counsel regarding the documents he had signed. Several relatives who had believed his story contacted Nelly one after another. We're sorry. We didn't know. He told us you abandoned everyone. Nelly thanked them politely. She didn't argue. The truth was already doing that for her. 3 months later, Nelly finally returned home. This time, no one decided whether she was welcome. She unlocked the front door herself. The house looked almost exactly as she remembered. Her father's reading chair still faced the window. The old clock still ticked in the hallway. Dust covered nearly every surface, but the house was standing. She spent the following weeks repairing what had been neglected. Not because she wanted to preserve a building, because she wanted to honor the man who had trusted her with it. One spare room became a welcoming guest room for relatives who wanted to visit with honesty instead of entitlement. The dining room hosted family gatherings again, but only with people willing to treat one another with respect. Some relationships quietly healed. Others never did. Ryan never regained the influence he once held over the family. His version of events had collapsed under the weight of the documents. His credibility disappeared with it. Nelly no longer felt any need to defend herself. She had spent years trying to earn acceptance. Now she understood something her father had known all along. Real love never demands that you prove your worth. Before returning overseas for her next assignment, she walked into her father's study one final time. His handwritten letter, rested inside a simple wooden frame on the desk. She smiled softly. They told me not to come home for Christmas. She gently touched the frame. But in the end, I discovered I was the only one my father had truly trusted to keep our home.